Hello again everyone, Edwin Learnard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be deviating once again from my Taurus rising routine, and I'm going to talk about something a little bit different. Things that I believe would bother Zodiac signs. And basically the reason I talk about this is for two reasons. Well, one, if you have a friend of these any one of these signs, which you will, because everybody is one of the 12 signs, but you'll know maybe based on the sun and or rising sign of the person, maybe what things maybe to avoid in connection with that particular sign, and maybe just mess with them a little bit once in a while, just to take a little jab at them, not in a malicious manner, but just in a way, just, as a friend, just to kind of get, just to make them raise an eyebrow, but let them know that you're joking, of course, right after you do. You might say something that, or act in a way which might really surprise them. Anyway, or exasperate them, I should say. Anyway, let me get started. The first thing is Aries. Aries, I would say, is the sign where they generally don't like to be conquered in any form of competition. You look at that. The coach of the UConn women's college basketball team, and he's had, I believe, multiple undefeated seasons. He even said there was some commercial, he said he doesn't just want to win, he wants to conquer and dominate. Being outspoken with an Aries and straightforward, this is something that they're very good at. If someone is like that with them, it might sometimes cause a problem, I believe. Being combative in conversation, that could be another thing. You mess with them, you could maybe come up with a project or idea before them. You have like an Aries friend or acquaintance, you want to mess with them. Or walk in front of one of them in a line. A lot of times they often like to be first, and that is even including sometimes in a line. They like to lead the pack. So if you're with a bunch of friends and they're walking first, this Aries person, a sun or ascendant, walks first, walk in front of them just to mess with them maybe. And a lot of times Aries like to have their interests come first and foremost. Tell them one time that you want your interests to come first. Say, sorry, I can't do this today, and then of course let them know you're joking shortly after that. Now the next sign I'll talk about is Taurus. Now with Taurus, you could tell them whether true or not, you made more money than them. That's one thing that would maybe get to them. If you tell Taurus, say for example, you had no tax liability last fiscal year and they did, that would kind of mess with them as well. Taurus doesn't like to be conquered or defeated, and I believe in games involving money such as Monopoly. I have Taurus rising, as most of you know. Monopoly had been my favorite game for some time, and that was and I didn't like to be beaten at it, I'll tell you that right now. Another thing is Taurus generally have an aversion to traveling in long trips, and don't be surprised if you ask a Taurus sun and a rising sign to go somewhere, could very vehemently go against it and say, no, I don't want to do it. Or you could play a joke on them and say, hey, you want to go to a trip to another country? I want to go out of state, and just mess with your Taurus friend or acquaintance and see how he or she reacts. Now the next sign to talk about is Gemini. Now Geminis are known just for being very smart and witty. Geminis don't like to be outsmarted, outmaneuvered. If you show you're more clever or shrewd than them or outsmart them, you can mess with them by doing this. Come up with some mind-boggling question that you know the answer to and they don't maybe. You could talk incessantly, talk too fast for them. If you talk about a subject they have no conception of, which is very few since Geminis are so multifaceted and versatile, if you talk about a subject they don't have much knowledge about, it can be irksome to them whether they show it on their face or not. Geminis can often interrupt someone while talking and in the midst of a conversation because their thoughts keep on ascending from one plane to another so much faster than the average person's, I guess. Geminis, I had a Gemini friend that I mess with, and I just like to just kind of somewhat outsmarted him one day. For some reason, he didn't want to tell me his exact birthday. He told me he was June and he was a Gemini. So what I did one day was, I knew that if he said June and Gemini, it's between June 1st and 21st generally for most periods. Now, if we look at what I did was, I walked up to him one day and said very abruptly, it was like June 15th or 16th, and I said, how does it feel to be 48? Or something to effect, in an attempt to narrow the birth date down. And he said, oh, I'm not quite there yet, Eddie. And he went, ooh, and he got really dumbfounded and surprised. And basically when he said he wasn't there yet, then I had it narrowed down between like maybe the 16th and 21st. So Geminis generally don't like to be outmaneuvered or outsmarted. And the thing is, they also don't like necessarily to have someone more knowledgeable about a subject than I had a Gemini rising friend. I talked about astrology, and I felt like on the surface he might have been impressed and astounded by what I knew, but I kind of sensed that maybe he wanted to know a little bit more about the subject. So anyway, that's one thing you could do if you have the Gemini sun or rising friend, to kind of mess with them. And certain things you don't necessarily want to show, in the serious side of it, you don't necessarily want to show them up too much intellectually in front of others, especially. I think that's a thing that they could have a problem with. Now, for Cancer, I'm Cancer sun, so I should know something about this. Cancer is what's very blatant and obvious, I think, is just general ridicule and criticism. Cancers could be obviously very sensitive, and I think especially matters pertaining to their home and family. You don't necessarily want to chastise their home or say too many judgmental things. If you have a good friend that's a Cancer acquaintance, or you just want to mess with them, you could say, oh, look, for example, it looks like a shingle's ready to fall out, or this home's not a contemporary design, is it? Or just, if they knew you were just being jocular and flippant. But at the same time, even joking with Cancer sometimes it might be taken seriously, so I'd be careful as far as that went. But anyway, now Leos, I see Leos as having a problem if they have a friend or someone they know that gets more notoriety, accolades, and or some kind of attention than they do. Being more popular than them, you can mess with a Leo friend and say, for example, if both of you have a YouTube account, say, man, I got so many more YouTube video views than you do. What's going on? Whether it's true or not. You could Leos don't like to have their ego damaged or hurt. I mean, let's say if you win an argument or dispute over one of them, over a Leo sun or rising person, in front of mutual friends, for example, that might bother them more than they're willing to let on. Now, they might not show it on the surface in seclusion, in private, or in solitude. They might show their hurt a little more there. But these things, I think, they can take to heart. So I wouldn't, try to show, Leo up too much unless you just want to, you're just messing with them as a friend. Being the life of the party they host, for example, could be another thing that could be irksome to Leos. I think hosting bigger parties than they do, being more magnanimous and generous than them, or for example, say you got them a more expensive gift than he or she gave you, that could be something that could get to them. You could do that just kind of as a practical joke, get them something. Not really as a joke. I mean, if you're going to get the more expensive gift, then you're actually going to have to purchase it. But you don't do anything in a malicious way, of course, in this. But I'm just saying that could be something where you can mess with a Leo buddy or acquaintance's head, I think. Now, last but not least, in part one of this topic, Virgo. Now, yeah, I mean, Virgo, there's multiple things. It seems like you could defeat them at a game which requires much analysis, such as chess. If you do better scholastically than them, that could get to them. If you have a friend in school, of course, you know I'm talking about Virgo, Sun, or Rising. That's what I'm referring to with all these signs. If you do better scholastically than they are, you could tell them, mess with a Virgo, Sun, or Rising friend, tell them you're getting better grades than him or her. Maybe be more observant in general because they're just so punctilious with details. Point out objects that they may overlook. Be more analytical in general. If you're watching you could say if you're watching some kind of sports, let's say football game on TV, give it a little more, try to give more analysis than them, to mess with them, see how they respond to it. And basically, in the serious aspect of this, you don't necessarily, like, if you were just not joking with this this Virgo Sun or Rising sign friend, you wouldn't want to necessarily say that you got better grades than him. I think that's one of their things that they generally would not want to hear, more so than most, I'd say, other signs, with maybe exception to Gemini. You could play a joke, you could play on a Virgo buddy, maybe rearrange something in their home, put something out of place, and they're probably going to notice it because, like I said, they're more astute regarding details and observant as far as compared to most of the other signs, I would say, if not all of them. And also, you could do something where, I don't know, leave something around somewhere, or like an old rotten piece of plate. If this would be a practical joke, I guess, leave a piece of food that's old, that has a real nasty odor or something. I think Virgo seems to have an anathema to things that are unpleasant odors, because they're just so clean, meticulous, and immaculate about things. Or you can mess with them after one of them cleans something and say, oh, you know what, you missed a spot, and see how they respond to it. But like I said, this is all done. The reason I'm stating these things are two reasons. The things maybe to avoid, with these signs especially, that might make them irritated, exasperated, agitated. Or if you have a friend and you just want to do something in a jocular way, kind of like a little bit practical jokish kind of thing, yeah, you can mess with them, but not obviously let them know you're joking shortly after you do, because I'm not talking about doing anything out of malice or hatred toward anybody. Well, anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for the things that, as we'd say, zodiac signs dislike. Tune in next time, where I'll have part 2 of this topic. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis on a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone. Because a person, astrologically, is the sum of all their components in their natal chart, and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.